got a heart of goodness. She is a sloth. And when it comes to video games, she really talks. She really does talk.
Back again with Casey Explosion. Couldn't be happier to have you on. Casey, what have you been up to? What's on your mind?
Oh, many things, but right now, happy Halloween, by the way.
Is it Halloween now?
It is. It's how I decree it so.
That's
I'm
so
sick of
wonderful.
Christmas. I'm sick of Christmas. Keep it, people always complain about Christmas getting earlier and earlier every year.
True.
And I'm a little sick of people complaining about Christmas getting so early. It's always really been that way. But instead of trying an uphill struggle to kind of get away from like Christmas starting in October or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
let's apply that logic to Halloween, and it's like Happy Halloween.
Well, I don't know enough about the holidays in your nation and your country, but right now in the United States, they've just finished up their 4th of July stuff.
Yes,
And
I've heard this. This is where I was getting the idea
is that right?
for Halloween in July, because apparently in the States, from what I have heard, the next major holiday after the 4th of July is Halloween. Therefore, soon as 4th of July is over with, just launching into the horror movies and horror games and the Halloweenies and the spooky goings-ons.
I couldn't be happier about it. I don't know of it to be fully in practice, though now that I'm jogging my memory along with you, I'm remembering using the restroom to rest at the YMCA. I don't know if they have those in Ireland, but it's the
I
young.
do believe they do.
Oh, that's
I, I,
fun.
I don't know.
They are for young men, I guess, but I see women in there all the time. So hopefully you would be welcome. You should be. And I was in there resting and I heard a man say, Halloween in July, huh? And a woman say, you bet your sweet bippy, which you don't hear every day. And I that's all the details I got. I have no idea what
What is a
happened next.
bippy?
I think she was quoting Ruth Buzzy from the American television comedy show, if you want to call it that, Laugh In, from the 60s or 70s. We're going down a
This is
road, and
this is before my time, Jonathan. And
probably for the best.
I know you're a little older than me, but I don't think that's you're that old either, are
Oh, I
you?
am. I'm old enough.
You're not old enough to remember the 60s.
No, but it went on for a while, Laughing. Laughing, I could go on. I'm not going to go on because I'd rather go on with you and talk
About
about
Halloween.
about Halloween and those video games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last time I was on here, we were discussing kind of work simulation type games. We're doing a lot of that.
Mm.
So I was talking about SnowRunner and Power Wash Simulator
Hmm.
and Deep Rock Galactic
Oh, right.
and those kinds of games, and Hard Space Shipbreaker, which is always a
Oh, yeah.
mouthful of a title. Brilliant game. Absolutely brilliant.
Sounded so hard, so surprising with its depth and some horror elements to it, I think.
A little. It's
Hmm.
it's a bit it's a bit dark in its satire of capitalism.
Mm.
I think that's part of the appeal sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a little darkness juxtaposed with comedy, with lightness, makes both flavors come out even better.
I think it goes even deeper than that. And I think both horror and comedy are tied together in ways that are people don't think about that much. But
Mm.
for good comedy and for good horror, it has to surprise,
Mm. Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, there's a buildup of
And
tension There is
Yeah.
expectation of what can happen, and then defying those expectations with
Subversion.
subversion. Thank you. Much better way of
And
putting it.
it can be surprising, and it can be surprising in a way that can result in a laugh or a scream or both,
That's right.
which is often the case. A lot of horror franchises that have been around the block a little while, they kind of lean towards comedy after a fashion.
Mm.
Like last year, I had a marathon of all the Chucky movies
Oh.
and the first season of the Chucky TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was trying to find where online I could watch these, and with streaming services being the way they are, like there was maybe like Netflix only had Child's Play 3 like in my country as well. So you've as well as different streaming services, you've got regional issues where they won't have licensing rights in certain regions, and I looked it up, and it was cheaper just to buy the 7 movie box set on
Mm.
Blu-ray,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a whale of a time. So the first movie, it's actually still quite scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a much more, it's played a little more straight.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the second onwards, there's more of just Chucky just being a little shit for a laugh. And it leans into complete farce because
Mm-hmm.
there's only so much you can do with horror before it gets to the point of farce. How
Mm-hmm.
many times Freddy can come back from the dead?
Mm-hmm.
Nightmare on Elm Street definitely is another one that kind of leans a little into the comedy.
That Nightmare on
Uh,
Elm Street or Friday the 13th? I always mix those two up.
Nightmare on Elm Street is Freddy Krueger,
That's right.
and Friday the 13th is Jason Voorhees.
And they met once and
They
had a
did.
farcical time.
They had a very silly movie directed by Ronnie Yu, who also directed Bride of Chucky.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How do you like that? What a perfect fit. The thing about Chucky is he is a small doll that
yeah,
you can just kick. Like his
yeah,
all of an adult's limbs are longer than Chucky's, and Chucky fights with a knife. He is a Muppet, basically. He is not harmful. The first one, as I recall, works with that feeling so many of us have that the people who can help us don't listen to us. So the kid
Hmm.
is like, Chucky is talking to me. He's gonna kill, and the parents are like, oh, come on. And then the mom starts to
Yeah,
wonder, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. So the fear and tension for me came from that feeling of asking for help and people not believing
yes,
you. And then after that, Chucky becomes the lead and the protagonist even of some of the movies. So that's not
yeah,
gonna be scary. It's more for fun at that point. But making a Muppet a dangerous thing in a game is a risky move, and I'm glad that they continue to take the risk. Chucky is still going now, and now there's this new
yeah. He's
game
got a
called
TV series.
that keeps going. I thought that'll last a season. Nope. It found its audience, which is such a delight for me. And this new game everyone's talking about is My Friendly Neighborhood. I haven't played it yet. I can't get a bead on if it is genuinely scary or if it's more of a farce or somehow both.
It's not a very scary game by any stretch,
Mm.
but it is it leans into a lot of old school survival horror tropes and gameplay. So I think what some people expect when they see this, it's like, oh, evil puppets, evil Muppets, rather.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where some people go wrong with their expectations of this game is that is this another Five Nights at Freddy's type
Mm-hmm.
game where it's lots of like it is a twisted and evil kind of thing, and it's not really that. It is a much more whimsical game. It's a much more whimsical take on the whole kind of childhood thing, but what if horror.
Hmm.
It actually feels a lot more close to the childhood kind of like whimsicalness. There's no blood or gore or anything like that. And if you get caught by the Muppets in the game, they kind of just like try to give you a hug and kind of jostle you a little. It's not it doesn't really have that much of a sense of danger
Hmm.
for the character.
Just
It's
you.
just way more whimsical is definitely the core of it. I mean,
Hmm.
you're fighting, like, you get weapons to defend yourself with. Like, you start off with you get a wrench and you can thwack them a bit, and later on you get a gun that is loaded with post-it notes. Some sort of, it looks like a Filodex, a Rolodex mixed with a revolver. It's this bizarre looking. It looks bizarre, and when you shoot it, the letters fire out, and they're like solid.
Oh, interesting. Like
It's
how in
weird, yeah,
Sesame Street, there's often like a big letter B or something, and then they'll sing about it or something. You
yeah,
you actually hit them with like physical letters from the alphabet,
yeah.
and they don't
And
like it.
they don't like it. They'll take a few hits and then fall over and be inert for a time. You can't kill any of them.
Mm. Hmm.
It's not quite that type of game. So if you come back to an area, they'll be up and about again, and they'll want a hug. And in order to avoid getting hugged again and jostled around a little and knocked over, you kind of have to avoid them a little. Or if you have spare duct tape,
Mm.
just a roll of duct tape will render them inert for a while. They'll still be chatting away and talking away, and it's got a lot of survival horror trappings without any of the blood and guts
Hmm.
or such. And it's such a marvelous game. I'm a few hours into it. I've gone through a few areas. So gone through the soundstage area, and I've just come out of the basement level. It's a really good Resident Evil
Whoa.
kind of game. It's fantastic. Like, in the first area, it even has like roaming bosses, kind of like the way later Resident Evil games, like from 7 onwards, would have like a sort of roaming boss that you would, a nemesis type character that you would encounter in a certain area, and they will keep after you. You can't really get rid of them. You just kind of have to avoid them. And so for the first area, the soundstage, you're trying to avoid this very large Big Bird type character. And it's marvelous. It's lovely. It's very funny.
Hmm.
And then when you get
Interesting.
into the sewers, there's a sort of Muppety. He looks like Gritty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Gritty, and he'll pop out of the various pipes. He's like this mechanic called Ray,
Pops out
and
of pipes. Why are you in the sewer? What, what? That's not what I expected. I expected you to go to various sets. I imagine they could use the premise of you are at the place where they shot this TV show to bring you to different environments that look like they were supposed to be entertaining in a TV show. I used to watch a lot of Sesame Street, and
yeah, like
sometimes
you
they'll.
go. It's in the basement, so there's like a bit of sewer, a bit of like kind of backstage area and kind of stuff where they store things, and like locker rooms and all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff that you might expect in a studio.
Like behind the
So
scenes.
yeah,
Interesting. And I get the sense that a lot of these games that try to subvert the creepiness of a lot of kids shows and make it overt,
yeah,
they want to say like behind the sweet exterior of these Muppets or Barney or something, it was evil. But what you're telling me is these guys are just they're loving, misguided Muppets that just like shake you and hug you.
yeah.
So it's subverting the subversion
Yes,
that
that's exactly what it feels like. It like
mm,
I think somebody going in expecting something like a Five Nights at Freddy's or a that sort of like very intensely jump scary heavy kind of thing would be very, very surprised at the content here.
hmm And you said like Resident Evil, which I think of as quintessential survival horror mechanics,
mm,
even though the frankly, I don't find those games all that scary to like look at. The
yeah,
atmosphere of them is very hokey, which is fun for me. I
yeah,
laugh at Resident Evil more than anything else during the cutscenes and whatnot. But that juxtaposition again between the comedy and then playing it can be very tense.
yes,
It sounds like because these Muppets can't die, I am assuming you have a limited amount of duct tape.
yes, unlimited ammo and
Oh yeah.
limited health as well. So like if you get jostled around a bit too much, it's going to be like a game over, and you have to go back to the wherever you last saved. It
I
has
gotcha.
like a save token system, like the ink ribbons in Resident Evil.
Ah,
It has a little bit of tension in that sense that there are stakes, but it's nothing seemingly too violent. We don't There is no death
yeah.
really. Just
It
kind of just a failure state. And
mm-hmm.
I am having such a marvelous time with this game because it's like it's a Resident Evil. It
Mm-hmm.
has all these kind of trappings of the genre that I really love, that I really enjoy. All the puzzles and everything.
Hmm.
And kind of like if you look at the map screen it's straight out of Resident Evil.
Oh wow. Yeah, and I saw the inventory screen looked very much like Resident
Yes,
Evil 4, the briefcase.
yeah, the attaché case. You have that. Like I think the character you're playing is like a mechanic who comes in who gets called in to shut down the broadcast. And I think it's like a toolbox.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So
And so often in games like this, you are there to clean things up or fix a problem and whatnot, but it's not overtly stated. This time they're coming right out and saying it. And as you're talking about it, I'm picturing that this is maybe a literal kids game instead of looking like a kids game, but then making it scary. They are instead just making this a game that 10-year-olds could play without getting too disturbed. Like it
yeah,
feels
I,
like
I
a
would I would
yeah,
not I would not hold back a recommendation for kids because I know a few parents whose kids are obsessed with horror games a little maybe a little bit too young of an age.
sure.
But I think being that age, it's that forbidden fruit of I know I shouldn't be liking the scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of friends who have kids, and they're like, I have one friend whose kid was obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's
Mm-hmm.
at a very young age, and some of those games I personally wouldn't recommend to kids because they're genuinely scary things. But yeah, my friendly neighborhood would be, there's nothing really overtly gory or violent really happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's charming in that sense.
Gives me so much hope. A lot of the YouTubers my child likes have recently switched to trying to win people over with death and horror. So their thumbnails have gone from like, I survived 100 days in Minecraft as a pig to I ripped Sonic's heart out. I was stabbed. This other YouTuber is dead, and it'll show them in like a coffin. They're not actually dead. Skibbity, they're all doing
Oh,
skibbity
the
stuff.
skibbity toilets.
All of a
Those are
sudden,
marvelous.
they are disturbing and
They're just
and not for kids in my mind, but the kids YouTubers are all lobbing on to this kind of horror, and I'll be so
yeah.
relieved as someone who doesn't want my child to have nightmares for years if they lob on to this scary because it's tense but ultimately not disturbing brand of subversion horror that this
Mm.
my friendly neighborhood seems to represent.
Yeah, it's Such a fascinating game.
Mm.
Having a great time with it. Highly recommend it. What else have I been playing lately? Uh, one I would definitely say is not for kids. Amnesia: The Bunker.
Oh,
Have
there's a
you
new
heard of this one?
Amnesia?
There is a new Amnesia, yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And again, it subverts expectation a little in the sense that they've given you ways to defend yourself this time.
Huh.
It's not simply hide from the monster. You can kind of defend yourself a bit. You have weapons, you have ways of solving environmental issues and, like, let's say, bit of survival horror, bit of a immersive sim
Hmm.
in the sense that you can go about things in different ways. Like, let's say there is a door you want to open, roll a barrel of explosives in from a different area, or you could find a brick and throw it, and
Ah.
it's like we can set fire to things, and there are rats that you can throw food at to distract them. I wasn't a fan of the whole hide from the monster genre.
Hmm.
You're defenseless, you can't fight off your assailant. And I didn't find that all that fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it a lot more tense if you can defend yourself. It gives you a sense, it's not a sense of empowerment. Because in survival horror, your weapons are often very limited.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have a gun or you have a weapon does not make you empowered. You're still very disempowered, but you got a couple of bullets. You could conceivably defend yourself. And that tension I really love.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when your only responsibility is to hide, unless they can continually think of fun ways or surprising ways to do that, it becomes a responsibility that's too simple to have too many unknowns to it. The very first
Hmm.
Clock Tower, which I was excited to see, is being re-released and translated in English for
Yeah.
the first time. That was so weird because it felt like a point and click, but then I was getting murdered all the time.
Hmm.
So that did a good job at giving me so many unknowns, giving me something I thought I understood, the point and click genre, but then it was suddenly this, at the time, brand new hide and survive genre. It really worked for me. Amnesia I always liked because it was coming off of a time when I had gotten exhausted with how action oriented Resident Evil had gotten. But
Yeah.
but now Resident Evil has gotten tense again and limiting again in a lot of ways. So now that that's happened, it makes perfect sense for Amnesia to give you more responsibilities. Like, you need to figure out the way to get through these doors, I'm guessing, in ways that conserve your resources, that are less
Yeah.
risky. And that's in itself tense. And then finding out how to survive with your limited resources, again, more tense than just thinking, well, in this game I need to hide behind a wall
Hmm.
or something or find a hole. Now I'm guessing you need to think outside the box more and
Yeah.
and not be sure if you're going to play it correctly, and that's scary.
Yeah. The only other game I really liked from them was Soma. And I
Mm-hmm.
never finished that, and I need to go back to it. That's the
Oh,
one, the underwater one, where there's some very creepy monsters.
yeah. And if I remember correctly, a fair amount of questioning whether you know what's really going on and if your grasp on
Yeah.
reality is strong. So that's spooky. That's fun.
So
You're
it's
having
it's a nice little kind of hard sci-fi twist.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Spooky. You're having spooky fun in
I'm having
July.
a lot of spooky fun, and I've been having a whole year of great horror games. Tying this back to the last time you had me on,
Mhm.
there's a game called Dredge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that could be another kind of work game if you think of it slightly. You know, you're doing fishing and you're going out onto the ocean and fishing, doing little mini games and inventory kind of. Your ship's hold is basically an attaché case for fish, and
Hmm.
you're playing fish Tetris to kind of fit them all in. It's just a marvelous game.
But it's not all it seems. It's not a simple fishing
Yeah.
trip.
It's a horror game as well, and once it starts to get dark out, oh, stuff starts to get a bit strange. Your fisherman, your player character, you might start to see stuff, and it could hurt the ship. And if your ship gets damaged, and you've only so much hull that you can take damage on before it's game over. And
Yeah.
it's a very good game because you have that tension of going out, doing little fishing mini games and dredging mini games, and gathering yourself up resources and upgrade equipment and fish to sell for a profit that maybe you didn't notice how late it was getting in the
Mm.
day-night cycle.
Hmm.
And sometimes you want to get fish that are only coming out at night. And it's marvelous. It's got this There's a wonderful tension between this very relaxing, very engaging fishing game and the horror elements.
The stuff under the water is such a
Yeah.
under explored aspect of horror in games, I think. I remember the first Resident Evil, there's suddenly a shark, but it's just in the
Yeah.
hallways. If I remember correctly. The hallways like flood and you're like, I see
Hmm.
the shark. That's a problem. But the fact that there's so much you can't see under there, and the way you describe Dredge, it sounds like all the things you can't see at first feel like potential opportunities under there. We're gonna make some
Hmm.
money. We're gonna find some stuff to play fun fish Tetris with.
Well,
But then
underwater is very scary.
it's a whole other world under there, and you never know if you're going to find treasure or get your leg bit off whenever
Hmm.
you get in the water. I'll have to check that one out. There's also there was a fishing game jam, a fishing horror game jam through
Oh,
Ludum Dare a few years ago. And I don't know if Dredge came from it, but a bunch of fishing horror games did. There's one
I
called Fishing.
missed I
What,
missed
Sega?
this. I
I
didn't
know,
know
I
about
didn't know
this.
either. I only knew about it because there's a game called Fishing Vacation that I might get the opportunity to review at some point that looks like an old Game Boy game. And you
Hmm.
can play through it in 25 minutes, half hour, though there are 4 different endings. That also plays with what lies beneath, so to speak. So it's a whole thing that I hope gets blown up and used more
Yeah,
to
another game I was playing. This I've been swimming in great horror games.
I'm
So
so
there's
glad you
a
did it.
there's another horror game that I played this year that was an absolute treat, called Stasis Bone Totem. It's the kind of sequel to a previous game called Stasis, and
Hmm.
it is an isometric point and click adventure, and it had these wonderful kind of 2D pre-rendered backgrounds and gorgeous to look at, great atmosphere. And I really liked that game.
Interesting.
And
Stasis
then
Bone Totem.
they came out with the sequel now this year,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh wow, I have to get in on this. And the central premise is in the first game you played it, you controlled a single protagonist. In this one, you have three protagonists, a husband and wife team who are like ocean salvage crew. They have a
Hmm.
boat and they go out and find ocean salvage to sell. And it's got this very dystopian, horrifically bad capitalism kind of thing going on, and they're desperate, and they find what appears to be an abandoned oil rig, and something has gone very, very wrong on this oil rig. And they think, is this going to be good salvage, or we're going to have to investigate, because if there are people alive, they might not get a claim on this thing. What if it's not abandoned? They get inside, and there's some horrors in there. It's very dark.
Sounds great. So much of this is suddenly reminding me of how I feel every time I go online, usually in the morning for the first time in the day. Will I find a bunch of positive comments?
Fantastic terrors never felt before.
It could be a treasure or it could be a terror. I never know. And we all experience that. I think if you have any level of connection with folks online, you don't know what you're going to find happened overnight. Did people look at your post and try to get you hated? Or are you going to find out that people loved you while you were away?
I try to actively put people off with my jokes.
Well, it's not working. People love you in your jokes, and as they should. And
They're
unfortunately,
awful.
they're
Genuinely awful. I
they're
try to alienate as many people as I can, and it's not working.
no, it's so knowingly, endearingly, humbly enjoying how bad it is. That's what makes it good. And unfortunately, this Zoom call is going to self-destruct in about 2.5 minutes. Casey, is there anything you want to give us before we sign off for this time?
I was going to rattle out a few more games. I was going to mention Aliens Dark Descent as well, because that's another kind of horror game. Don't know if you've seen this one.
Is it strategy?
Yeah, it's kind of a horror strategy game. And it does something really fantastic in that it replicates the exact kind of tension that the Aliens movie did. You are actively trying not to engage the aliens because they are quite relentless, and like a couple of them could really fuck you up, and your Marines are stressed. They start freaking out. It's like all of a sudden it's like game over, man, game over. And you need to keep on top of their stress and manage it. And it's an incredibly tense game.
Whoa.
It is. I was not prepared for how intense that game is. So unfortunately, I can't rattle off as long as I could on that one, but
you're always welcome back on. Yeah, maybe during actual Halloween. Not to say
what do you mean actual Halloween, Jonathan? It is actual Halloween.
I had a feeling you would respond in that way. I'm sorry. I will try to embrace the summer spooky fun I'm having with you.
It's called spooky season, Jonathan. It lasts. They wouldn't call it a season if it didn't last for a season.
An entire 3 months. I will enjoy these months with you, Casey. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me back. It's been wonderful.
That was Casey talking, she's so cool. Hey Casey, thanks for being on the show. I had a great time.